My name is Sydney Marsh. I'm 37. At our family retreat, my mother took a matching navy t-shirt out of my hands and said, "These are for people with real families." My 8-year-old daughter, Willow, stood beside me holding the smaller shirt she'd picked out herself. She'd spent the whole morning asking when we'd take the group picture and whether she could stand near the front this year. My sister laughed from across the lodge dining room. "You came here alone, Sid. Don't make this weird." She meant without a husband. My mother folded both shirts and set them behind her, then told the photographer she wanted the picture to look consistent. I looked around at the catered lunch, the welcome bags, the relatives wearing shirts charged to the retreat account I'd funded. I'd also been covering part of my mother's mortgage and the payment on my sister's SUV. All of it had started as temporary help during separate emergencies. Somehow, years later, it had become tradition. I nodded. Understood. I took Willow upstairs, packed our bags, and drove home before the picture was taken. That night, I pulled my card off the lodge balance, ended the mortgage transfer, and canceled the SUV payment scheduled for Monday. By midnight, my phone showed 79 missed calls. Nobody asked if Willow was okay. My mother demanded I restore the mortgage transfer. My sister texted, "You can't punish the whole family because you're embarrassed." Then Willow appeared in the hallway holding the retreat shirt design she'd drawn weeks earlier. "Mom," she whispered, "were we only invited because you paid?" That question sent me looking for something I didn't expect to find, proof that the insult at the lodge had never been an accident. For the first hour of the drive home, Willow didn't ask for music. She usually picks our playlist before I even leave the parking space. That afternoon she just held her retreat drawing on her lap while my phone buzzed in the console. Every time it did, her shoulders got a little tighter. At a rest stop, I found messages from my mother, Carol, my sister, Brianna, and half a dozen relatives. One cousin said the photographer had waited. Another said I'd ruined the weekend. Brianna sent the finished group photo with a laughing emoji over the empty space at the edge where we would have stood. Nobody used Willow's name. That absence mattered, because Willow had tried so hard to belong. She'd saved $8 of allowance for the shirt, practiced smiling without showing her missing front tooth, asked twice whether the photo might end up on Carol's hallway wall. "Will Grandma lose her house tonight?" Willow asked. Her fear told me exactly how much she'd absorbed from years of family emergencies. "No. Grandma has income and savings." I was helping. Helping is different from being responsible. I needed that distinction too. For years earlier, my mother had a health scare, and Carol told me one missed mortgage payment could ruin everything. I agreed to send $1,300 a month for 6 months. She was back on her feet in 3. The payments kept going for 4 years. Brianna's SUV started after her divorce. I offered $750 a month for 6 months while she got stable. 30 months later she had a promotion, a live-in boyfriend, and 2 vacations under her belt. When I asked for an end date, she accused me of measuring love with a calculator. The retreat followed the same pattern. I'd started it so Willow could know her cousins. Soon I was covering deposits, rooms, shortfalls. By year 3, relatives waited to hear what I'd fund before contributing anything themselves. I'd called it generosity. Sitting in that parked car, I understood I'd trained everyone, including Willow, to see me as the emergency plan. At home, Willow folded the retreat schedule until the dates disappeared and dropped it in the trash. That evening, Brianna sent one of her kids to my door with a note, "Please don't take our car. We need Aunt Sydney to stop being mad." I sent the child home with reassurance and called Brianna directly. "Don't use a child to collect money from me again." She wasn't excluded. She just wasn't in the official picture, Brianna said. I hung up. Seconds later, Carol texted, "Your sister is crying. Is that what you wanted?" Willow had been silent for hours, and nobody had asked why. After she fell asleep, I listed every recurring family payment. The total exceeded my own mortgage. I'd postponed fixing our leaking bathroom while financing heated leather seats, cut my own retirement contributions so my parents wouldn't have to adjust their lifestyle. At the bottom of the page I wrote, "Temporary help requires an end date." I emailed Carol, my father Dennis, and Brianna. I'd consider a brief, documented transition, but nothing would resume without full financial disclosure. I asked for 5 years of retreat expenses, the SUV balance, and my parents' household budget. Carol answered in 3 minutes, "Family does not audit family." The next morning Willow asked whether we were still a family if nobody else agreed. "We were a family before that retreat," I told her, "and we're one now that we've left. No shirt decides that." She nodded, not fully convinced. I couldn't fix this with a speech. I'd have to prove that belonging couldn't be bought. Once I asked for records, they stopped calling me emotional and started calling me dangerous. Carol sent a 2-page summary with rounded figures and no actual statements. My mortgage help was labeled a temporary retirement gap even though both parents had income. Lodge expenses appeared as shared family enrichment, my name missing from the contributor column. Brianna cropped her SUV screenshots to hide the payment history. I replied, complete records by Friday, or my decision was final. Thursday, my father called. Dennis had spent his whole marriage treating silence as neutrality. At the lodge, he'd stared at the floor while Carol took the shirts out of my hands. Your mother says you're humiliating us, he said. I asked where my money went. Those aren't the same thing. Then send the records. He paused. If I do, things won't go back to normal. Normal ended when you watched them tell Willow she wasn't real enough for a picture. At 1:14 the next morning, his email came through. Attached wasn't Carol's cleaned-up PDF, it was the original spreadsheet. Dennis admitted Carol had built it 5 years earlier and he should have said something then. 2 tabs were hidden underneath the main sheet. The first, labeled Support Schedule, listed every transfer I'd made and assigned it a purpose after the fact: mortgage preservation, vehicle continuity, gathering stability, education reserve protection. My money hadn't just covered emergencies. It had preserved everyone else's savings while mine absorbed the cost. The second tab, Family Continuity Plan, projected future estate gifts and education deposits. Brianna's 2 kids appeared with contributions mapped out through age 18. A cousin's kids got smaller amounts. Willow's name was last on the list. Projected family contribution, $0. Beside it, in Carol's initials, a note: Sydney's household ends with her. Direct shared resources toward continuing branches. My hands shook so hard the cursor kept skipping across the screen. The sheet had been created weeks after my first lodge deposit and 2 months after the mortgage transfers began. Carol hadn't just insulted us at the retreat on a whim. She'd built the belief into a formula and maintained it for years. An archived email thread made it worse. Carol had written that my help was protecting funds for grandchildren who'll carry the family forward. Brianna had asked whether I'd object if I found out Willow had no account. Carol answered, Sydney chose an unconventional household. She can't expect tradition to rearrange around it. Dennis had replied that he didn't like leaving a kid out, but that Carol understood the long-term numbers. He'd recognized the harm and gone along with it anyway. I read until sunrise. The file rearranged every memory: Carol thanking Brianna for giving us a full table the year I paid for the whole holiday, Willow getting a bookstore gift card while her cousins got engraved lockets, Carol asking me to increase mortgage help the same month she funded 2 education accounts. I'd mistaken access for acceptance. They'd let us sit at their tables. My money had expanded those tables, and then treated Willow like a guest the moment a camera came out. I printed everything, locked the originals away, changed every linked account, and added a security code. Carol called before breakfast. Your father violated my privacy. You kept a spreadsheet ranking my daughter as worth 0. It's a responsible family's plan. They don't get to decide one grandchild is a dead branch while charging her mother for everyone else's future, I said. She argued Willow would inherit from me eventually. I reminded her every other grandkid would inherit from their parents and get family contributions. When I asked her to explain continuing branches, she finally said, you knew your choices were different. It was the closest she'd come to honesty all morning. I cried on the bathroom floor where Willow couldn't see. Not over the money. Over years spent performing usefulness for people who'd decided usefulness was the only place I'd ever have. I reached out to each of them separately, since group conversations just let the loudest voice rewrite the facts. First, Dennis. I thanked him for the spreadsheet but told him disclosure didn't erase participation. I thought your mother would soften as Willow got older, he said. You waited for time to do the work you refused to do. I offered one final mortgage transfer, 3 weeks, paid straight to the lender, if both parents signed a document confirming the end date of my support. No apology required, just a stopping point. Dennis called it fair. Carol took the phone. We will not sign a contract with our own daughter. Then there's no transition payment. If we touch our retirement savings, that's on you. It's the result of your budget. I offered Brianna 3 direct SUV payments if she signed an end date and confirmed she'd never send a kid to my door again. You want a confession, she said. I want an end date. You're controlling everyone because Mom told the truth. What truth? Willow doesn't have the kind of family my kids have. She'd had time to choose those words. Then she accused me of teaching Willow that money mattered more than love. No, I said. You taught her my money mattered more than her belonging. She claimed her kids would lose transportation. I reminded her she owned a paid-off sedan from her divorce. She called it unreliable, even though I'd paid for its last tune-up myself. Her boyfriend, Cole, called later. He'd known I'd helped with the SUV once, but thought that ended the year before. Brianna had told him the payments came out of an investment account. She asked me to cover it and told me not to call you, he said. I benefited. I should have asked. It was the first thing anyone had said without an excuse attached. I turned down his offer to repay me. That was his relationship to sort out, not my pride to rescue. The group chat turned vicious. Carol said I was threatening the family home. Brianna claimed her kids were being punished. An aunt wrote that Willow would carry the guilt if my parents had to move. I saved screenshots and didn't reply. I still loved Brianna's kids, so the guilt still landed. Then I separated discomfort from actual danger. Brianna had a safe car, 2 working parents in the picture, no real threat. My parents had income, retirement funds, real equity in their house. Nobody was facing homelessness. They were facing changes they'd been using my money to avoid. I still hovered over the payment screen for almost a minute before I canceled it for good. Ending the support felt like breaking every promise I'd made during their emergencies, until I remembered each of those promises had come with a limit they'd quietly erased. Holding a boundary wasn't breaking my word. It was restoring the part of it they'd ignored. That evening, Willow found the retreat photo on my desk, forwarded with the caption, "Look what your pride made you miss." "If they think we're not real, why do they want us at the meeting?" she asked. Carol had demanded everyone gather Saturday so I could restore the family arrangements. "They want the payments back," I told her. "Can I ask one thing?" My instinct was no. I didn't want to use her as evidence, or make her defend her own existence. "I don't want to defend it," she said. "I want them to answer." We agreed she could come in for 10 minutes, ask her one question, and leave with my friend Priya. She could change her mind at any point. Nobody was allowed to question her, touch her, or follow her. Before bed, she wrote something on an index card and set it face down. I didn't read it. My parents' dining room looked like every holiday I'd financed. Coffee and pastries covered the oak table, the retreat photo sitting in a silver frame at the center, like proof the family had survived fine without us. Brianna sat beside Cole. Dennis stood by the window. Carol had invited 2 aunts and an uncle as witnesses. When Willow walked in, everyone stopped talking. Carol reached toward her. "Come sit with Grandma." I stepped between them. "She has 10 minutes. No one questions her." Willow set her index card on top of the automatic payment authorization Carol had printed for me. "If Mom and I aren't a real family, why does our money have to keep your family together?" Nobody answered. Carol opened her mouth, but Willow raised one hand. That was my only question. She walked out without waiting for permission. Priya met her in the hall, and they left. She hadn't asked to be accepted. She'd forced them to hear the contradiction sitting underneath their comfort. Carol started crying. "How could you let a child say that?" "I didn't write it. Every thought in her head came from you," Brianna said. "I set the spreadsheet on the table." "Then explain how your words ended up in a financial plan when she was 4. Carol pushed it away. "This meeting is about preventing a crisis. It's about ending one." I handed out the folders. My aunt found the Continuing Branches tab and looked at Carol. "Did you know this was private estate planning, funded off Sydney's transfers?" I laid out the money trail. While I paid $1,300 a month toward the mortgage, my parents had been increasing education deposits for the other grandkids. Legal, sure. But they'd pleaded hardship, used my support to free up their own cash, then routed that cash toward the kids they considered legitimate. Carol repeated that Willow would inherit from me. My uncle asked why Brianna's kids, who had 2 living parents, got both an inheritance and ongoing family contributions. "Their households continue the family line," Carol said. There it was, no shirt, no lodge, no excuse left to hide behind. Brianna accused me of twisting numbers because my choices had consequences. Cole turned to her. "Did you know Willow was listed at 0? She hesitated. He moved his chair back. My uncle pressed her, and she finally admitted she'd known, then said her kids deserved more because they came from a complete home. And when that complete home needed a car, I said, you sent the bill to mine." Brianna warned that Willow would grow up knowing I'd broken the extended family over one photograph. "She'll grow up knowing I stopped adults from charging admission to her own family." Dennis sat down. I objected once. Then I let it keep going. Carol glared at him. "Don't perform remorse because she controls the money." "That's why we're here," he said. "We let Sydney's money matter more than Sydney." It didn't undo his years of silence, but it cracked the wall protecting Carol's version of events. I opened the last folder. "The lodge balance goes to whoever stayed. The mortgage and SUV support end permanently. Both transition offers expired tonight, since neither one got signed." Carol pushed the authorization back toward me. "Sign for 3 months. We can talk about feelings once the house is secure." I tore the blank form in half and set both pieces beside the photo frame. Brianna stood. "You vindictive, sit down," Cole said. "No one contacts Willow without permission," I continued. "No one sends a child to collect money. No photo of her gets used to advertise a reconciliation. Future contact requires an apology that names what actually happened. Sorry you were hurt isn't enough." An aunt accused me of dividing the family. I handed her the group chat screenshot where she'd written that Willow would be responsible if Carol lost the house. You put a 9-year-old into the mortgage conversation before I ever brought her into this room. She looked down. Brianna told Cole he'd need to cover the SUV himself. He said she'd told him it was already paid off from the divorce settlement. You lied about your debt and about my money, he said. She turned to Carol for backup, but Carol was already arguing with Dennis about selling investments. The people who'd stood as one wall started fighting over who'd absorb the cost. The room fractured along every line my payments had been quietly holding together. My uncle stood up. He wasn't coming to another retreat until the exclusion was acknowledged. One aunt followed him out. The other turned the framed photo face down. You're enjoying this, Carol whispered. I'm relieved you can't hide behind my generosity anymore. That's not the same as enjoying it. You've become cold, she said. No. I became clear. I set the 2 extra shirts Carol had mailed that morning on the table. Sending them after the payments stopped was her attempt to rename exclusion as a misunderstanding. We don't want a place in a picture that requires us to finance the frame. Outside, Willow was waiting with Priya. She didn't ask if they'd apologized. Did you sign? No. She let out a breath. Driving away, my phone kept buzzing. I turned it off. Their panic didn't outrank our peace anymore. For 2 days, everyone assumed guilt would make me cave. Monday, the missing payments became real. The lodge split its unpaid balance among the rooms that had actually been used. Nobody lost the trip, they just got a bill for the weekend they'd expected me to finish covering. Brianna rejected the transition offer outright, and after 2 missed SUV payments, she asked Cole to absorb the loan. By then he'd looked at her finances and found almost $20,000 in credit card debt hiding under a lifestyle my payment had been quietly propping up. He moved out 3 weeks later, not because of the car, but because she'd lied to him about her debt, about my money, and about why she expected him to fix it. The engagement ended. Brianna sold the SUV before it got repossessed, barely clearing the loan, and went back to the paid-off sedan she'd called unsafe. A mechanic confirmed it just needed routine maintenance. Without Cole splitting rent, she left the townhouse when the lease ended and moved 12 minutes away. Her kids kept their school and their friends. She picked up more hours. Their dad adjusted his pickup schedule. Life got smaller, not worse. Carol's reckoning took longer. A financial advisor told my parents that without my $14,400 a year, they could only keep the 4-bedroom house through heavier retirement withdrawals or a refinance they couldn't really afford. The house had high taxes and more space than they needed. It had also been Carol's proof that she was still the head of the family. The advisor recommended downsizing. Dennis agreed. Carol refused. They fought about it for 6 weeks. Dennis finally split his income from hers and refused to let her promise more family money without his sign-off. She called it betrayal. He called it a boundary he should have set years earlier. He moved into a furnished apartment while the house was listed, because Carol kept canceling showings. It sold 4 months after the retreat. They had enough equity to be fine, just smaller. Dennis bought a 1-bedroom condo, Carol rented a townhouse. She didn't lose housing. She lost the house that used to define her. The annual retreat quietly ended. My uncle wouldn't attend another one while the continuity plan stood unaddressed. A couple of cousins asked for old expense records and found out how much I'd actually funded. Carol had let everyone assume she and Dennis paid for it. 3 relatives apologized specifically, for repeating Carol's story or for dismissing Willow's exclusion. I accepted the words without rushing back to closeness. Others blamed me for airing private matters, wanting permission to judge my boundary without ever looking at the facts underneath it. Carol had built her whole identity around hosting and organizing. She stepped down from chairing a community fundraiser after 2 relatives asked why she'd taken credit for retreats I'd paid for. I never said a word to that committee. Her own story collapsed under its own paperwork. Carol's first letter to Willow opened with, "I'm sorry you misunderstood a difficult adult conversation." Willow mailed it back with 1 line, "I heard it right." I filed it in the folder. Age didn't earn anyone forgiveness, and stationery didn't manufacture sincerity. Dennis's letter said, "I knew it was wrong. I stayed quiet because disagreeing cost me comfort. You didn't cause the house to sell. We built promises around money that was never ours." Willow wrote underneath it, "I'm not ready to see you, but you answered the question." I mailed it back exactly as written. Brianna never apologized. Her lawyer sent a letter claiming I'd promised to pay until the SUV loan was gone. My attorney answered with the messages proving a 6-month agreement that had stretched into 2 extra years, voluntarily. The claim disappeared, and she was left with the legal bill. I never sued anyone, never asked for $1 back, and never touched the other kids' education accounts. Revenge didn't require clawing anything back. Every adult just had to live inside the truth of their own income, choices, and relationships. At home, I restarted my retirement contributions, fixed our bathroom, and opened an opportunity account for Willow with less than half of what I used to send out every month. I also started therapy, because cutting off the payments didn't automatically cut off the instinct behind them. When I brought up guilt over the house sale, my therapist asked, did Carol lose housing, or the housing she preferred? I wrote that down. The 79 missed calls became 12, then 3, then none. Silence used to feel like abandonment. Now it just gave Willow room to laugh without hearing adults argue about what my love was supposed to cost. 6 months later, Carol sent a second letter. I treated your family as less real while depending on your family to preserve mine. I turned that belief into a plan and expected money to shield me from the cruelty of it. My house, my role in this family, and my reputation changed because I refused to change. Willow kept the letter but didn't ask for a visit. Accountability had shown up. Forgiveness was still hers to give, on her own time. A year after the retreat, Willow's class did a project called The Shape of Home. She didn't use the retreat photo. She photographed our repaired bathroom tile, the soup pot from the night we came home from the lodge, a drawing of Priya waiting during the family meeting. In the center, she put our kitchen table with 2 chairs pulled out. Her caption, a small family isn't a missing family. In her presentation, she said families get built through birth, choice, trust, and consistent care, and that no shape makes another one less real. She sat back down without applause, and I was grateful. She didn't have to perform pain for anyone's benefit anymore. Dennis waited 5 months before Willow allowed a supervised lunch. He came without gifts. I thought staying quiet kept the peace, he told her. It just kept me comfortable. She asked if he still believed a family needed a mother and a father in it. He said no, and admitted he was ashamed it took consequences to make him question something he'd already known was wrong. She agreed to another lunch a few weeks later. Trust came back in small amounts. Carol never got the same access. Her later messages kept mixing real accountability with excuses about her generation, about losing the house. Context could explain a belief. It couldn't make Willow feel differently about the person who'd caused the harm. Brianna stayed outside our lives entirely. The smaller apartment, the older car, the cancelled engagement didn't make her kinder, just more visible. I chose to stop confusing payments with love. I chose Willow's worth over Brianna's comfort, and our actual future over a unity that only ever existed for a camera. That summer, I used part of the old retreat budget to rent 2 cabins by a small lake. I invited Priya, a couple of cousins who'd apologized, their families, and Dennis, for one afternoon. Every household paid its own share. No required shirts, no assigned spots. The second morning, Willow spread fabric markers and plain t-shirts across a picnic table and said the only rule was everyone drew whatever they wanted. Dennis drew a crooked pine tree and waited. Willow added silver branches to it. Mine was 2 chairs under a kitchen light. Willow drew a row of different houses connected by a dotted path and wrote, people can belong without matching. Later that afternoon, someone suggested a photo. People just drifted toward the dock, no arranging by household. Willow stood next to me, then pulled Dennis into the back row herself. It was her call, and he understood exactly what it meant that she'd made it. A dog wandered through the frame right as the timer went off. 2 kids looked away at the last second. It's my favorite photo I own, not because it replaced anything, but because nothing in it had been bought as permission. That evening we sat at the end of the dock. Do you regret paying all those bills? Willow asked. I regret what I was trying to buy, I told her. I don't regret learning we never needed to buy it. Across the water, Dennis cleared the picnic table without being asked. Priya packed up the leftovers. Nobody was waiting for me to solve an emergency. For years I believed my family needed my money and I needed their approval. Both beliefs were holding up the same system. When I canceled the payments, I thought I was taking something away. I was actually giving everyone their responsibilities back, and taking mine back too. Carol lost the house she used to prove her own success. Brianna lost a car, a relationship, and an identity she'd financed with other people's trust. Dennis lost the cover of staying quiet and had to rebuild trust through action instead. None of that was something I did to them. It was the bill finally coming due on something my money had been postponing for years. Willow and I didn't become a real family the day someone apologized, or the day a new photo got taken. We always were one. I just stopped paying people to pretend they agreed.